and Sullivan and others.
How did the Uniparty and the neocons make this kind of useless, fruitless, expensive, bloody war acceptable to Americans? Is it because no American boys are coming home in body bags, unlike in Vietnam?
Well, that's a critical component of it, yes. First of all, keep in mind, most Americans on any given day, and I try to tell my friends in Europe and Northeast Asia this all the time, and they look at me a little strangely. But most Americans on any given day don't care what happens beyond our borders, Judge. And why should they? If you live in Kansas City, in Portland, Oregon, somewhere in Iowa, somewhere in Kansas or Alabama, your life has very little to do with what happens beyond your borders. And so we've been in the habit for a very, very long time of consigning responsibility for the conduct of our foreign and defense policy to people in Washington. And we've tended to ask very few questions. What do we got for an ideology leading us right now? This ideology is an ideology of fear. It promotes enemies overseas that we must defend ourselves against. It promotes the notion that free speech and free thinking are dangerous to the American public, that therefore that must be suppressed. This is a very strange environment, and I think Americans are beginning to realize they've lost control of the government. But this happened a long time ago. People are used to making these decisions in a vacuum. We've decided it's in the interest of the United States that we should put ourselves in a position where we could actually be dragged into a war against Russia. And we all know it's not just Russia. If we end up at war with Russia, we'll be at war with China. Certainly Iran will come on board. India is not going to help you. The Japanese are going to walk away from you as quickly as they can. So what does that leave you with? A bunch of Europeans who are not prepared to fight any more than we are. So this is not a new problem, but it is an old one. And the only way to solve this is to get into that government and root out these people and replace them and find a new way forward. Perhaps that will happen over the next 12 months. I just hope it happens soon enough, because right now we're on the knife's edge. That's the point. People don't understand that this war in Ukraine is over. The prominent Russian politician in the Duma, in the parliament, who spoke the other day and said the Ukrainians have one of two choices. They can either meet our demands or they can go out of existence. He wasn't kidding.
Right.
Moscow is not going to sit there and let us move anything we want back into Western Ukraine. They're not going to tolerate someone in the government there who is fundamentally hostile to Russia, incurably hateful. They will insist on someone in that government that watches out for Russian national security interests. So what are we going to do? If this were put into a referendum and people were allowed to discuss it for 30 days, I think Americans would come out overwhelmingly against doing anything in Ukraine. But we won't do that. And no one in Washington wants that, because they're profiting from this. And the people in Washington think that the United States is still living in 1992, that our armed forces are what they were 30 years ago, that there are no problems. There's nothing that serious happening here. Therefore, they have the freedom of maneuver to do whatever they want. That's ridiculous. It's wrong. It's dangerous. That's where we are.